I think the highest grade out of those two releases was 102 grams per ton gold over 6.1 meters. And what's really neat about MX and the high grade zone in particular is that we've been drilling results like this since our discovery in the end of 2018. It's been a very consistent deliverer of high grade gold.
Hello, welcome to Assay TV. Today, I'm joined once again by Kelly Malcolm, who is the Vice President of Exploration at Amex Exploration. Amex are exploring in the prolific Abitibi region of northern Quebec. And Kelly, great to see you today. I'd like to start things off straight away. You've been doing a lot of drilling recently at your Perron Project up there in Quebec. Tell us, the high-grade zone, you've had some results recently out of that part of your project. Tell us a little bit about what you've been finding.
Sure. Thanks again for having me on, Leo. And what has been really exciting about the high-grade zone press releases in particular is that our two last gold-focused press releases discuss the definition and expansion drilling of the high-grade zone. What was really neat is we batched up a whole bunch of drill holes within those two releases. So I believe we put out 52 or so holes. Of that, over 20 of those 52 holes were better than what we call 50 metal factor, which means grade times width. So an example of 50 metal factor would be 5 grams over 10 meters, 10 grams over 5 meters, etc. And I think the highest grade out of those two releases was 102 grams per ton gold over 6.1 meters. And what's really neat about MX and the high grade zone in particular is that we've been drilling results like this since our discovery in the end of 2018. It's been a very consistent deliverer of high grade gold. And actually those two releases that we put out were two of my favorites because they covered basically the entirety of that very vertically dipping high grade zone.
And it's split between, you've got the western high grade zone and the eastern high grade zone. You have to be congratulated for the simplicity of your descriptions, by the way, of your zones. It's very easy to understand where they are and what they might be. But I believe the eastern zone is deeper and the western zone is shallower. Yeah. What sort of depth are we talking about?
We've gone down to over 1.25 kilometers vertically, with all indications that the mineralization will extend to depth. Really, the western and the eastern are just divided in two by what's called a late Proterozoic dike, which is a later feature that cross-cuts the mineralization. So we just split them in two for the basis of simplicity and to make the diagrams nicer. But in reality, that is the same system, starting from just below surface, extending down to over 1.25 kilometers, and just sliced sort of in the middle and shifted actually in a positive manner. So what was really neat about that is the western zone here and the eastern zone here actually moved together a little bit, which is really nice for potential mining because you're adding ounces per vertical meter with that shift. Whereas if you shifted the other direction, you'd have this big gap in the center of the deposit that wouldn't be so good for the resource and for mining.
How wide is the dividing dike?
Our estimates are about 25 meters of lateral extent.
Right. So not that significant if in terms of sort of if you were to mine the whole thing together.
Correct.
Absolutely. You've also had some success recently. Your VMS, you've got a VMS zone as well within the project. And you had some follow-up drilling at an initial discovery hole. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So we're really excited about that. The original AMX project and property was actually acquired for its VMS potential. The reason being is that to the east of us is a mine called Normetal. The town that we're actually operating in is named after that mine. The rocks that we found our discovery in is called the Normetal mine sequence. So it's VMS country, it's a VMS area. So the previous operators prior to MX acquiring the project in the late 90s were Falconbridge, who were base metal explorers, base metal miners, and they were looking on the property for copper and zinc mineralization. they kind of fluked into some gold mineralization through that exploration campaign. Jacques, who's the chairman now, and I believe was the CEO at the time, saw the potential for a sizable gold system from those preliminary results. And that's essentially how we got our hands on the project. So we haven't done all that much VMS exploration historically. We always had the inclination that there was going to be something significant and sizable in terms of VMS on the property. But since we made the discovery of the high-grade zone, our focus was gold. And we didn't want to confuse investors and confuse the market by becoming a base metal exploration company. So we sort of put those on the shelf. As we've grown as a corporation and grown our audience, we realized that now was probably the time to start looking. Coincidentally, copper was rising, zinc was rising. So it was a fortuitous time to actually make that corporate decision. So we went and drilled the QF zone about 6 or so months ago now. Put out spectacular results. It was about 8 meters of better than 2% copper, around 1% zinc, 20 or so grams of silver, and about 0.2 grams of gold. The neat thing about those numbers in particular is that they compare very favorably to that past producing mine. Normatal produced 10 plus million tons from surface down to over 2.5 kilometers at very similar grades, around 2% copper, 5% zinc, about 1.5 ounces of silver, and half a gram of gold, and over very similar mining widths to those 8 meters that we identified in our first drill hole. Within that first announcement, we, I guess, put a little teaser out of visuals of the second drill hole that we drilled into the system, which was about a 60-meter step away from that first drill hole. And we reported those results, like you mentioned, about a month or so ago now, returning very similar values, very similar widths, and indicated to us that we are potentially onto something significant and sizable in a base metal camp. The neat thing about that mineralization, because it's not related to the gold mineralization, except for the fact that they're spatially related to each other. So they're within about 600 meters. You could potentially share mining infrastructure. But what's really exciting about this copper zinc discovery to me is that we're about an hour and a half drive away from one of, actually, I believe Quebec's only, or one of Quebec's only smelters. So in Rouyn-Noranda, there's the Horn smelter, and that essentially accepts and processes most of the nearby copper and zinc mineralization that's identified. So very attractive potential economics if we're able to outline a sizable body of high-grade ore.
Absolutely. So your plans going forward, are you going to sort of two-prong strategy, be drilling the gold and the VMS at the same time?
Yeah. So currently we've got one drill operating on the base metal mineralization. We've got a number of drills focused on gold and regional work. In the event that, and we're very hopeful this will happen, in the event that we can identify a sizable body, we'll increase the amount of drills onto that base metal mineralization. Gold is still our primary focus in the company. We're working towards a resource, and that is our major priority. But it is a really interesting sweetener that we think will add value to the company and hopefully to the shareholders' pockets as well.
And I guess, and also as you mentioned just now, without the need to build a big sort of processing plant for the base metals, that would make that much easier to bring into production.
Yeah, that's our thoughts internally, and obviously we'd have to do some economic evaluation of that. But just on a very back of the envelope, sort of fast and loose discussion, it certainly makes a lot of sense to me.
We've talked about the high-grade zone already. There are a number of other targets around the property. What's been happening at your other key targets, sort of Grey Cat, Gratien? What's been happening there?
Sure. So we literally just had a planning meeting about 2 weeks ago, discussing and budgeting our plans and goals for this winter season. As you know, it gets quite cold in the Abitibi, so we get a window into certain areas of the property that are a little bit swampier and a little bit harder to access in the summer months. So we typically prioritize certain areas that we're not really able to get to as easily in the summer. So one of our major focuses, actually two of our major focuses, are expansion of the Denise zone and the Grey Cat zone. So beginning in about a month or so from now, once everything cools down, we're working on a significant expansion of the Denise low-grade mineralization. We've targeted about 4,000 meters of step-out drilling from our known area. The Grey Cat zone, we're targeting about 8,000 meters, I believe, of significant expansion along strike of the known mineralization near surface. So really our goal in the interim, aside from continuing to work on the high-grade zone, the new VMS zone, is to add ounces to the overall project and property. And in our opinion, the easier way to do that is by expanding upon these lower grade near surface, easy to access zones like Grey Cat and Denise.
Mm. I mean, it's interesting for people to know that for you guys, you're looking for things to freeze so that you can get in there and do the drilling rather than waiting for things to thaw so you can get in and do the drilling.
It's honestly, that's the Abitibi drilling season. So it's funny because no matter where you go in the world, everyone has their own sort of exploration window. So I've worked up in the Yukon, and you have your 5 or 6 months in the summertime. Certain areas of the Abitibi Greenstone Belt, it's really only a winter drilling program or helicopter supported drilling. The neat thing about MX is that we go year round. We're fully road accessible. It's dry on site. It's a pretty neat spot to be exploring.
Absolutely. And in terms of funding all of this, how's the cash position looking?
It's looking good. We've got, as of our last financials, which were June 30th, about $21 million. We're spending around $2 million a month on exploration and a few $100,000, actually less than that, on G&A. So in a strong position going into the new year. There are a number of warrants, around 3 million or so, at $2.10 that, if exercised, will bring in around $6 million as well to further shore up the treasury. But we're in a strong position. We can continue drilling at the same pace that we're operating well into 2022.
Excellent. So in terms of sort of news flow, things coming out, things for people to look out for, what should people be looking out for over the next few months?
Well, of course, with MX drill results, we're very regular with our reporting. We sort of do a release every 3 or so weeks. We've got a number of drills spinning, which produces a lot of core, which produces a lot of assays, and in our case, produces a lot of great results. So always watch out for drill results here. We've got a number of results pending. And some quite attractive visual results as well. And we will be conducting some metallurgical work on Denise and Grey Cat. So that should come out prior to year end, hopefully, if not early into the new year, based on the labs being a little bit slow lately. And aside from that, that's kind of it. We like to update the market on a corporate level, so we often have interviews coming out similar to this. So shareholders and investors should keep their eyes open for additional updates as we go further. And aside from that, business as usual, drilling lots of holes and expanding on what we have, and hopefully, as we really kick off our winter exploration program, maybe some new discoveries to come with that as well.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on the recent results and best of luck for the winter program. And thanks for joining us today for this update.
Thanks a lot, Leo. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.